Why, hello there, and I'm still here. I thank you for tuning in, and I hope this video finds you very, very well. Today, I'm bringing you a review of this Vosteed Psyop 299. I have done a full review on the original large Psyop. You can check that in my review playlist. But this is the 299, I guess the medium-sized one, believe it or not. There is a smaller one. What is the Vosteed Psyop? It is a Tough Knives collaboration. Jeff Bluevault. I'm not 100% sure how he likes to pronounce his last name, but he is a custom knife maker out of Pennsylvania. Not that far away from me, in fact. Hopefully, one day I'll get one of his customs on the channel, because I've always wanted to check one out. And I've had quite a few of his designs, now that I think about it, on the channel. Aside from these two Psyops, I've had a Vanguard Nakiri, and I think a couple other knives that he's designed. If not on the channel, then at least at my hands at one point, like I own them. I guess I'm like his design language more than I even thought. But, without further ado, wait, you know what? With further ado, consider liking and subscribing. I am 3/4 of the way to 1,000 subscribers, and the sooner you say that, the less I can have to remind people to like and subscribe, which it would help my sanity, I will admit. It gets a little bit weird saying it over and over again in multiple videos. But I guess that's just par for the course, right? Also, as always, in my full reviews, there will be timestamps down below if you want to skip over the specs or whatever, just for some convenience. So that's in the description if you care. Now, let's jump into specs so we can actually start talking about this knife properly. As the name suggests, the 299 has 2.99 inches of blade. It is just under 3 inches, just noticeable enough that 3-inch line basically falls right over the edge of this beginning of the scale there. Overall length, it's just shy of 7 1/4, and you're just about 4 1/4, pretty much on there for the actual handle. Comparisons to our resident comparisons: the Civivi Conspirator for the full-size knife comparison. I use that one because it's a very clean 3.5-inch blade. And the small Civivi Elementum, which is a 3-inch blade. As you can see, these are very, very close and comparable. This is a tiny bit longer than the Elementum. I don't know if you're going to be able to see based on angles and everything, but of the camera, but it does have a tiny bit more handle, or a decent bit more handle, but a tiny bit less blade. In fact, the Civivi likes to say 2.98 inches of blade. Personally, for me, whenever I measure this thing, it's 3 inches or even just slightly more. However, it is definitely a small knife. It does have a bit more presence in height and thickness than the old Civivi Elementum, but for the most part, you're pretty close there. And our final comparison, let's get this out of the way, is the 2 AA batteries for grip length, so you know what you're holding on to. So, this is about where I'd say as far as you can go on grip length for this for this knife as far as forward goes. And behind, technically, it's almost even with the butt end of the knife. However, I wouldn't consider this a grippable area. I'm going to call that just a bit like 1.8 AA batteries, maybe 1.85. It's a decent amount of grip length, but not quite 2 AA batteries long, basically. Decent for the size of the knife, so I don't think it's going to cause you problems. Of course, the larger Psyop has considerably more grip length. It is a much larger knife. Hopefully you can read that. 3.81 ounces, which, not an ounce an inch, isn't too bad. It does have full steel liners in here. Let's see that there. It's also got titanium bolsters, the extra mechanism for the liner lock, a weirdly stout stop pin. So, not super light in terms of an ounce an inch ratios wise, but it's not a heavy knife by any measure. Hardware check. Let's flip this over to check the T8, T8, and T8. So every single screw on this knife, in fact, yes, every single screw, including the thumb studs, is T8, which, yes, I like seeing that. It's one thing I do appreciate Vosteed. In particular, they do seem to be a company that takes a lot of feedback and interacts a lot with people. They have a real community kind of thing going on. So, they also seem to listen, and T8 all over is definitely listening because it's way better than what we normally get. Will you zero out, please? Thank you. Thickness. Almost half an inch on the dot. It is contoured. With the pocket clip, however, Yeah, we're going to talk about that. It's 700 thousandths of an inch, so 0.7 of an inch. Pardon me. Blade stock is 117 and a half thousandths. Okay, sure. And behind the edge, should be relatively thin behind the edge. Yes, she is. About 14 thousandths behind the edge, which, in my opinion, is a great thickness, especially for a knife like this. It doesn't need to be thick. It's small, it's a light-duty knife. It's not the insane less than 10,000 super slicer, but this is a good medium ground where it's going to be able to be used in more applications and have a bit of strength behind the edge, enough so that it's just good for its size, in my opinion. Anything under about 18 thousandths behind the edge on this sort of 3 to 3.5 inch knife is usually pretty good. I like slicier knives, so I like hollow grounds, but this one is by no means bad. And I believe that brings us to the end of our specs. Yes, it does, right about here. All right, let's just talk about this knife. S35 VN blade steel, a good lower high-end to upper mid-tier steel, in my opinion. And this is actually coming in at a good price. I will talk about the prices later, but this one is coming in quite good for the average S35. It is, S35 is a steel, I believe, that was actually made for pocket knives, which is always kind of cool. Got a nice stonewash here, drop point blade. The tip is relatively in line with the pivot, so it's got a relatively low tip, which means you definitely get decent access to that tip. Pretty accessible and usable for those draw cuts and everything. Bit of belly up here, reasonably thin. Got jimping that does nothing. It's texture. It's texture. That's kind of all it does. The stonewash that's on this kind of knocks that down completely, so whatever. Thumb stud actuation on this one. I know the full-size Psyop has a opening hole aperture and a front flipper. This one does not have the front flipper and opts for thumb studs instead. They do stay out of the way, out of the cutting path, however. The final thing about the blade is I wish they would remove the logo. Tough knives, I don't mind, at this price point, I don't mind seeing logos. Budget tier, mid-tier, I don't mind you putting logos on the blade. I prefer to see it, if you're paying $500, I prefer to see a really professionally, sleek and elevated presentation where you get rid of logos entirely, personally, that's just me. But at this price point, I don't mind the logos, however, I don't like them on the bevels, and I'm going to say that every single goddamn time, and I seem to have to say that in every single video. Just put it up here, make it a little smaller, right there. I mean, they kept the Vosteed off there, which is nice, and the S35, but yeah, that could be a little bit higher. It's not the most intrusive thing. It's not terrible on this knife. It's just a little circle kind of thing, but personal preferences, right? And the final thing to say about the blade is the stupid sharpening choil is actually kind of not good here. I don't know why. They gave us this much big of a sharpening choil and then dropped the plunge all the way to the edge. I mean, why couldn't they have just stopped it here? Or even here? Yeah, no, it drops to the edge. Fortunately, however, coming back to that big old stop pin, that acts as the stop and not the button. So even though the button looks like it hits behind the edge, it doesn't touch. This is the stop pin for the open and closed position. And it hits way back there. So you can definitely cut in some more choil to extend this sharpening choil open forward a little bit, so you don't get a smile when you start sharpening the knife. That'll be a nice thing. It shouldn't be too hard. You can probably just do it with a Dremel and everything, and it's not going to cause any problems. So that's good. However, I wish they had just, preempted that and put the choil back here. It would have been nice. It usually is, but whatever. Bearings in the pivot. Decent action. Not, like, perfect action. It's one of those ones where, like some button locks, where if you let go of the button, it doesn't necessarily want to free drop. I will say that this also Vosteed. This is not a Viop. It's a Vosteed Croc. This one, however, is still drop shut, even if you let go of the button. This one's got a little bit of kind of a mushy. I think it's got a decent amount of tension on the button, and what happens is it doesn't really it's a little mushy on the detent. It doesn't suck it in very well, and it's a little mushy because once you get to a certain point, you start feeling that extra detent or extra bar pressure tension, And you have to keep it in pretty good, otherwise you sort of, well, here, I'll show you. You really have to hold the button all the way down until it gets in there, and even then, sometimes it just doesn't want to go all the way, or it bounces out. However, you can definitely make it work. Like, I'm doing this on purpose, but I can... Or I can't. Maybe I can't. Let's see. There we go. Yeah. You can make it work, but the button's a little bit mushy, and it's a little bit low in the... As you can see, it's pretty close to being flush there, and you really need to hold it to there to get all the tension off, which is basically flush. It's kind of the same issue I had with the full-size Psyop, which, again, you can find in... Or did I say that? I don't even know anymore. The review playlists, if you want to see it. The full-size Psyop, I felt that you had to, like, almost over-push the button a little bit super low, and it was a little wonky to do it. It wasn't hard, but maybe just a little bit more button would be nice. Just a little tiny bit higher. But it's not too bad. You can definitely actuate it. It's not going to cause you a problem, just something you need to get used to, kind of. Moving on from there. We have a little bit of jimping for texture here, and this jimping actually does work. Kind of let you know where you are on the knife. Steel liners with some skeletonization. Titanium bolsters held on internally somehow. I don't actually see where they're being held on by. Doesn't appear to be a screw in them, so maybe it's just I guess it's just the pivot and the position of the other inlays that's holding them in position? I don't know. That's interesting. Maybe there's a screw somewhere up in here that I can't see. I haven't taken this one apart, so... Oh, it's probably the stop pin placement and stuff. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. But, titanium here, micarta here. This is not the micarta this one came with. This just came with a plain brown micarta. But this also did come with the floral engraving here. I thought this was nice. I like seeing these little extra touches. It didn't add too much to the price. It is engraved. You can feel the texture a little bit. It's kind of like velvety, which is interesting. Very nicely done. Well executed. No complaints there. There are definitely versions without this, where it's just flat titanium. In fact, there's even a brass one, where it's just a brass bolster. And you can get different types of micarta for that. However, you also have a couple options for swapping out the actual handle scales. This is a bamboo micarta. They have like an ocean one, which is blue and like grays. Carbon fiber, stuff like that. So you have some options if you care to change it up. I changed it to this because I didn't like the plain brown. Does cost a little bit more, but I don't know. I think it looks okay. I think I said bearings in the pivot. If I didn't, well, whatever. It is a top liner lock, which means it is basically the same as a liner lock, except it is moved up here and actuated with a button that perforates the scale. And the way it locks up is the lock bar sits on top of that lock face, good lord, words, and in between that and the stop pin to hold it. There is no play. It's rock solid. And in fact, it's also centered. Yes. Good job there. There is a backspacer. It is steel as well, as far as I know. I'm pretty positive. Let's just double check that. Yes, that definitely feels like steel. So thumb stud steel, liner steel, backspacer steel, and button steel, but this is titanium up here. You have a, what's the word for it? Lanyard hole. There we go. Lanyard hole and a reversible pocket clip. As you can see, it is a wire clip that is reversible, which is nice because, well, button-operated locks, especially basic button locks and top liner locks, tend to be a bit more friendly to left-handed people than, I'm not left-handed, obviously, but left-handed people than, you know, standard frame locks and such. So having an ambidextrous clip mounting position is nice. And the slight contouring is nice. Very nice. There's lots of chamfers on here. What's not so nice is the size of this clip. I mentioned it when I was doing the specs at the 0.7 over 0.7 thousandths, 0.7 of an inch. That's a bit thick. This is a small knife, and it's got a pretty good size clip on there, just in general. And wire clips, well, a lot of people hate them, some people love them. They're never super uncomfortable. Like, you don't get hot spots or anything from them, but you almost always feel them. They're present. That is very much the case here. This is a very present clip. It's not terrible, but it's not great. Holding it here, choking up, it's fine, but it's not as good as I kind of want it to be for this sort of small, light-duty knife. Realistically, I mean, this is a Megaron Valona. This is a budget knife, and it's got a titanium popsicle stick clip on there that would probably be just shorten it up a little bit and use that instead would probably be a better option. There are definitely some other clip designs that might work a little bit better, just for general comfort, I guess. Like I said, it's not uncomfortable, but it's noticeable. So that is something you should probably go into this considering. I think I actually had the same issue with the titanium clip on the full-size Psyop too. It had some slight weird angle for my hands, but this is even more noticeable, but not uncomfortable, as I said. And if you're noticing these little black marks right here, that seems to be the clip. It leaves them on the micarta. I thought it was going to be a problem, but honestly, you can just clean that off. It's not a problem. I just took a little bit of rubbing alcohol? Yeah. And could wipe that off. It'll come back, but it's not hurting anything, and it's not, like, permanently on there, so no big deal. So, overall thoughts. The Psyop 299 is nice. I like it. I really like what they've done here, and I like that most of them come in around $125. This one comes in at $142 with the engraving and everything like that. Which, for us, for 35 yen, some titanium, well executed, yeah, I'd say it's a pretty reasonable mid-tier knife. I do think that if you don't care about the engravings, there's no reason to not go for the $125 ones, or $130-ish ones, wherever they fall. Unfortunately, this particular one is not in stock on Vosteed or at, well, numerous other sites. There are some other variants that are definitely still in stock, so I will link the Vosteed site down below to the Psyops, where you can see that they have quite a large catalog of both the full-size, like 3.5 inch, this one, and they even have a smaller one that's a crossbar lock, which is too small for me, but whatever. Whatever floats your boat, there's a lot of options, and this is pretty sort of just plain quintessential knife design that has some really good, smart moves, like this flat up here that makes it really comfortable to hold on to. Just counteracted by this rather large wire clip is what it is. Maybe there are some alternate clips that can fit in there. I think there might be a Lynch clip that can fit on Psyops. Maybe it'll work if you want to try something else. But overall, it's a good knife. It's a recommendable knife. I'm not floored by it. Oh, I will also say one final thing. The matchup of the scales is pretty good. This is for the replacement scales, but this end back here is a little bit kind of not sharp, but abrupt. So it feels like kind of a hard edge right there because it doesn't match up perfectly. It does actually match up perfectly up here, but just to be aware, if you do swap the scales, maybe there might be a tiny little bit of, catch right there. In fact, yeah. It's not a problem. I don't feel it when holding the knife. I just know it's there. So, for the sake of including it. Definitely deep carry. That's a positive. And with the size of the clip, it's not going to be trouble getting in and out of the pocket too much. It does have a flat. Never my favorite thing, but it does work pretty well. So overall, it's definitely a good knife. It's a little smaller than I normally go, and It may not be for everyone, especially with this clip on there, but it is worth considering if you're looking for something small with a little bit of extra zest to it. That'll end things here for me, I believe. So thank you very, very much for watching. Consider checking out something else in the channel. Some other lists or videos will probably be popping up on screen. And have a great day. See you.